Hello and welcome to Safety Talk. I am your host and personal safety expert, Pete Canavan. I am joined by my colleague, branding and social media expert, Neil Haley. How's it going tonight, Neil?
I'm doing fantastic, Pete. Again, it doesn't feel like summer yet, but we're getting close. And it's exciting that we're in the middle of almost the middle of May. I can't believe it. And soon summer's time's coming. And one of the comments before even you get into the safety is the sad situation that's happening in our schools today, especially in 2019 with the number of school shootings. That came out I saw it on Facebook. The number is just astronomical for this short time of the year. We're only halfway through the year and this many shootings. We really have to figure this out. It's become absolutely horrible.
It is staggering. And, our guest tonight was going to be talking about how we can maybe sort of mitigate some of that. And it is a sobering, sort of topic. And, what we talk about on this show every week is something that is safety related. It's going on in the news. Unfortunately, it seems like just about every week we have something in the news about another school shooting or a church shooting or something. So today I wanted to focus on something a little bit different, which is just as equally important, which is something that's been recently in the news. And, that is something that we basically thought was eradicated here in North America, and that is measles. It's like, okay, well, how does that really relate to safety? What does that have to do with it? But really, it has everything to do with it, because if you don't take care of your health, it's going to make you more vulnerable in many ways, because you're going to be in a weakened state with regard to your health. And of course, if you're unable to defend yourself, such as in some sort of physical attack or altercation or assault, that's going to be detrimental to you. Or if maybe you have to run to safety. So some sort of, natural disaster or something that occurs, maybe a hurricane, tornado, flood, something that occurs, if you're sick, you can't do what you can't perform at the normal level that you're used to, that is a problem. So when you're ill, your mind isn't as sharp, your muscles aren't as good as in shape that they should be or could be. So it's imperative that we do everything that we can to improve your overall, safety every single day. That includes taking care of your health, your body, spirit, and soul. So get your vaccinations, take care of your body, and stay in shape as best you can, because you've only got one body. And so, be sure to take care of that. So I just kind of want to talk about, mention that initially
That's
here.
so true. I mean, thinking about specifically enough it coming out again, if you're, for or against the vaccine, just this situation that happened in Pittsburgh with the cases of measles, really, we have to kind of really caution ourselves before we jump to conclusions, especially when we're thinking about the overall health of an entire population, not just specific people based on specific thought processes of not wanting to be vaccinated. And the danger of side effects for the vaccination versus an epidemic are two different things, Pete. That's the biggest problem I see, is that, we got to think of the whole group, not just focus on one individual or a side effect if it's going to hurt everyone if they're not vaccinated.
Right. And that's, something that, a lot of people think, they can make these decisions, and it's just, it's like, it's all about me. This is what I believe. This is what I want to do. Well, okay. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to sacrifice some of that for the greater good. Now, our guest today is someone who knows all about security, not just locally, but on a global scale. He has 20 years of experience in the homeland security and protection industry, and he manages sales and business development functions for a company called Metrasens. Now, if you're not familiar with them yet, you will be after this interview. Now, during our guest's career, he noted that mass casualty attacks occur when targets are most vulnerable. This, of course, includes places like we've seen these attacks occurring with alarming frequency, such as churches. But of course, it also includes any other place like concert halls or schools and, stadiums and any other place where people tend to congregate. Now, his passion for wanting to work in a capacity to find ways to offer more protection in those places led him to Metrasens. And they are a global provider of advanced magnetic detection technologies, and they are developed to make these sort of places safer. So I'm pleased to have on the show today Jim Viscardi, who is Vice President of Global Security at Metrasens. Welcome to Safety Talk, Jim. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, Pete. Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. So glad you're here, because, anything that can be done to improve safety is what we're all about here at Safety Talk. And we, of course, always seek out the new solutions and new technologies. And that's where, your company comes in. Now, for those who may not be familiar with the company and what they do, essentially you guys are a global provider of what you're kind of putting out as advanced magnetic detection technologies, and those technologies can help, of course, make an impact on how various facilities can protect themselves from different attacks, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Now, as an IT consultant, I was looking at the website before the interview today, and the physical data security piece that Metrasens has really intrigued me, and that's that ProScreen 500 product. And I guess this is something that you guys have developed that actually detects something like recording devices and also weapons. Could you kind of I just caught my eye. I wanted to ask you about that before we kind of dive into some of this other stuff.
Absolutely. And I know you guys have hit on this in past podcasts. Data protection, our own personal data protection, as well as the data that belongs to corporations, that's company sensitive, certainly the data that belongs to federal government agencies, that is security sensitive, is, we feel, something that is very important. And it's a market where we feel customers just don't have the tools that they need. Our goal is to prevent the Edward Snowdens of the world from walking into a classified area with a thumb drive at work and walking out with over 1 million classified documents, right? So traditional metal detection can't detect things like a thumb drive with any level of consistency, and not at all if it's concealed inside the clothes and, within the folds of the body or even inside the body. But that's what corporations need. They need a screening solution that can find data transmission or data storage devices anywhere on a person, and do so without submitting employees to a taxing screening process. And that's really what the ProScreen 500 does. It's a portable, flexible system that can be deployed at a SCIF setting, in a data center, anywhere where data needs to be protected, and do so in a way that for quick deployment and advanced detection of those types of threats.
Oh wow! So is that an integration? You're talking about you do integrate with other devices as well with your technology?
We can. The system can be used as a standalone unit. We see often that the system is integrated into a physical security information management system. Often that tends to happen with more advanced corporations and federal agencies. But we've provided a system really that allows the end user to do whatever he or she wants to with it. If they want to use it as a standalone system that is, let's say, at a cage inside of a data center, they can do that. If they want to use it as a fixed system that prohibits access to a classified area in a defense contractor's building that works with access control and video systems, they can do that as well.
That's interesting, because I was wondering, how does this one device, I didn't kind of get it. I was reading a little bit about it, but that makes sense where it'll actually be able to detect something. So if somebody's trying to even, get real sneaky. I mean, I've seen these pens that have a USB drive. So it looks like a pen. You unplug the USB, the end of the pen, it's a USB drive. You plug it in, you download your data, you plug it in. Oh, it's just a pen. So it could actually detect something like that.
There's all sorts of devices that we see out there. We see cell phones that are the size of your pinky finger that you could buy on Amazon for $40. We see thumb drives that are disguised to look like any number of innocuous items, phones that look like calculators and all sorts of things. And the crazy thing, really, Pete, is that you could buy these things online at a legitimate, shopping portal like Amazon or eBay or any number of places.
Exactly.
They're readily available, built to be covert, and this is something that's
crazy
that federal agencies have to deal with every day. And not just those things, by the way. Wearable technology like Fitbits and Apple Watches are something that are things that can be used for data storage, data transmission, or both. Just stuff that people have on them every day that they didn't have on them 4 or 5 years ago.
Exactly.
So the threat has evolved for these types of facilities, and what they need and now have is a technology that can evolve with those threats.
See, when you're this is very interesting. Can you give us an example of an end user using your system in a way to prevent something like this happening? We would never think this is happening, but then this could happen in many places where there's lots of sensitive material, as kind of bringing up the word espionage, right? in a certain way.
Absolutely.
So kind of giving us that example, we watch all these TV shows and stuff like this, but we've even heard about this kind of technology. Like, okay, I'm just going to try to get some classified classified information from the government, and I'm going to go in and try to break in. Organizations like yourself are going to say, well, you know what, even if you have the greatest technology in the world, we're going to catch you. So kind of give us like an example of how that works for an end user.
Sure. So we have a number of intelligence agencies in Washington and beyond who use our equipment to do just what you're describing, to prevent really just what you're describing. And they are using them in conjunction with things like access control to prevent data storage and transmission devices from going into whether it's a room or the wing of a building or even an entire building where there's classified information housed, right? So one in particular uses the system in conjunction with two things, their video system and video analytics system that goes with, and their the mag locks on their doors. So our system essentially detects any kind of moving ferrous, i.e. magnetic material that's moving within the detection zone of the unit, right? So you put it by the door, you walk by this thing, and if you can't clear this, in other words, if it says, hey, there's something here that is ferrous material that you shouldn't have, it sends a trigger to the video system and the video analytics system. So it immediately identifies through facial recognition who that person is, identifies where they are in the building, and then triggers the mag locks on the door to prevent them from going through the door until that alarm can be resolved.
Very cool.
All while being unmanned, right? So this isn't being done right at the point of screening. It's being monitored and controlled in a different room, in a different building, can be even in a different state, the way that the physical systems are set up. So
essentially the way that it works is it reads the for people that aren't real maybe understanding of how the technology works, this detector can detect the actual metallic signature of any metallic device that person's carrying, whether it's a firearm or a knife or a USB drive, correct?
Exactly. Very specifically, what we're detecting is its magnetic signature. So the things for data protection, the key things we're looking for are things that are magnetic, steel, iron-based metals. With guns, it's obviously the steel. With cell phones, it's the antenna, it's the speaker, it's the vibrating piece within the system. And when you have a system like ours that basically evaluates the Earth's magnetic field, which is naturally occurring, it's all around us, it penetrates everything, and you have something that has its own magnetic signature, like let's say a 22, and it moves through the detection zone of our system, essentially what's happening is our system is detecting the disturbance that movement creates in the Earth's magnetic field. The easiest way I know how to say it is that it's very similar to a duck swimming across a still pond. Okay, the faster that duck moves, or the bigger the duck is, the bigger the wake it creates. And our system, which is a passive system, it's not generating any waves or emitting any kind of interference, so it's intrinsically safe. Our system detects that wake that duck is creating. And because it can do that, it detects moving metals, so it doesn't have to be a stationary system, and it can detect those types of metals and thus those types of threats, not just under the clothes of people, even inside their bodies, through walls. Wow. It's just a very different technology.
Now, I'm hearing this. I'm saying you're talking about highly classified. If you're talking about, it can be used as a standalone system, but also integrated. But you're talking about big deployments with tons of security where you're integrating with a VMS, access control, and motion. I see this as something that would be a great product for schools. because of, the situation with, if there's a situation where somebody's trying to confiscate and bring in a gun or something into the school region. Have you worked with schools at all, or colleges and universities, and seeing that?
We have worked with both. And so we provide a solution to schools that offers that level of screening that they just haven't had available to them. It's kind of similar to really any venue where there's, kind of high footfall traffic and not it's what we would term a soft target, right? So our system, which is called the ProScreen 900 Plus, screens students, it screens staff and visitors without having them, and this is really important, change the way they walk into or around the school, and without creating a security setup that resembles a prison, right? So that's a big factor in what we do with schools and universities. Students can get out of their cars.
People. You don't have to want to. You're going to sit there, and that takes a lot of time.
That's exactly right. Students get out of their cars or off the bus or off their bike or whatever. They walk right into school. There's no divesting their backpacks. There's no stopping in line. They don't even have to slow down. However, if someone tries to enter that school with, let's say an AR-15, security officials can be notified immediately that there's a threat entering the school, and they can respond before the first shot is fired. And think about what that amount of time for response personnel can mean. So it's a difference between life and death, really.
Absolutely. Seconds count. And we've seen that time and time again. That's a fantastic piece of technology. I'm glad I kind of focused in on it, because I saw it on the website, started reading. I'm like, wow, this is really, really cool. And so it must be something that's fairly new, I would think. How long has technology been out there?
Well, the technology has been out for a while. It was actually pioneered by the founders of our company, who started this company, who started the development of this technology, which we call ferromagnetic detection, at Europe's largest R&D firm back in the 90s. And so, like every good tech company story, the story of Metrasens really starts in 2005 in the garage of one of our founders. His name's Dr. Simon Goodyear. And so he and his partner, Dr. Marquine, became aware of a news story in the U.S. about, they were located in England, about a 6-year-old boy in New York who had died inside of an MRI machine from the impact of a misplaced oxygen cylinder in the MRI suite. As we know, MRI machines are just huge magnets, right? And so you need MRI-safe oxygen cylinders, and someone brought one in that wasn't. And, there was a tragedy. At that time, though, virtually nothing was being done to screen patients or staff from bringing magnetic objects close to an MRI machine. But Dr. Keene, actually, who is the inventor of our products, based on the work he was doing for the MOD, knew he could take the technology he and Dr. Goodyear were working on and create an early warning system for MRI suites. And that's how Metrasens was born. And since then, we've really expanded into a number of vertical markets. And where the real growth is happening for us is in data protection, corrections, and in counterterrorism, which covers a number of sectors, including schools and stadiums and churches, like you said. And really, we focus on areas where either there's no security because traditional tools just don't fit, or where there is some security, but we can provide some enhanced security, meaning typically we can provide some level of early warning, like in schools.
So that's kind of how this whole thing got started there, in terms of developing that technology. And unfortunately it took a tragedy, but then you took this existing technology and was able to, now you're kind of fine tuning it into all these different areas. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of need for it. So that's fantastic that's, what the company's doing there improves that, security and safety, especially from places where, there's a lot of soft targets around and they're milling about, but in so many other ways, like, in an MRI suite, because typically what do? They tell you, oh, take off all your metal before you come in here, right? There's nobody kind of spot checking you. I mean, I haven't had an MRI in a while, but I know last time I had one, it was like, okay, just make sure you have no metal on you and then come on in. Well, if you forget, you could have a problem, especially depending on what it is.
So why isn't your technology so good? That it is very good. I'm not saying that. Airports, Why aren't we making it so that a product like yours can make things just go quicker through the airports and stuff like that with the ability to detect these things?
Well, it's a great question, and I think there are a number of
workers out of work.
Hey, too bad. Hey, if you could save money, hey, if they TSA can write a check right now, cut me a check for saying how we could save a lot of money. There you go. I don't.
Oh, so go on, Jim.
You go.
There are a number of variables to this, but what I will tell you is a couple things. First, aviation security, and my background was in aviation security many years ago, is a relatively small but pretty well-funded security sector funded by, federal government, obviously DHS and TSA in the U.S. and other agencies around the world. So it's a pretty cluttered area in terms of security equipment, and certainly they could benefit from advanced technologies like ours. However, we've made a conscious decision to focus on other areas. Really, our goal is to bring security to areas where security couldn't go before. So when you look at our website, like Pete did, and you look at the sectors we're in, those are our security markets, security and safety markets, but I wouldn't call them traditional, right? They're not federal government buildings. They're not ports and borders. They're not airports. They're correctional facilities, and they're behavioral health centers and hospitals, physical data security applications like SCIFs and, wherever, and certainly counterterrorism markets like schools and churches and places for whom the traditional tools weren't designed. Mm. So whereas the physical security industry, which is a very event-driven, reactive industry, as you guys know, has built screening tools for, let's say, aviation, and then try to take those square pegs and fit them into school and church and stadium round holes. We are going the other direction. We're choosing to start with those markets where we think security can have the biggest impact.
Plus, I think by going into these non-invasive sort of places where, it's going to be a lot harder for you to, pat down somebody at a hospital or a school or whatnot, because you have all kinds of issues. Now you have something that's a non-invasive way of screening people, whereas you don't have to go and compete with necessarily directly with a solution that's already in place. They're already doing screening, like at the airports. They're doing it differently, but they're doing it, and they're doing it in a pretty effective manner. And so that's great. So I think that's smart that you're focusing on some places where, like corrections, you got a guy walking into a prison, well, now he just has to walk past the scanner to make sure he doesn't have something in his body, that's metallic, trying to sneak whatever.
Absolutely. And corrections is a very strong market for us. And it's not because we've built another, quotes, airport style, like, detection system. It's because we've built a system that they don't use at the front door. By the way, most of the contraband that's in a prison doesn't come through the front door. It comes in through staff. It comes in through the kitchen and commissary vendors. It comes in through being tossed over the fence. Drones are a huge problem in prisons now because people are flying drones over the yard, dropping contraband into the yard, and that's how it gets in. Wow. So if 85% of your contraband doesn't come in the front door, then what do you need another detector at the front door for? What you need is a detection system that you can take behind the wall, if you will, and use to find contraband that is being hidden within the prison. And that's from a security perspective, that's where we kind of got our start on the security side. And we've taken that model and kind of duplicated it in behavioral health and physical data security and even counterterrorism. We build portable detection systems that people can deploy very quickly and very cost effectively, and in a way that makes sure that it fits their operational needs. And that's a big part of what we do, guys. We design products, security products, that fit both the operational and the, call it, architectural
sort of the function and the design and all of that.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
It fits. In other words, if you have to change the way your business, your facility, or whatever operates or looks to accommodate what we're trying to deploy, then we've not done our job right. The security solutions moving forward in the world are going to be ubiquitous. They're going to be all around us. We're not going to see them. Okay,
Right.
we're going to have tons of sensors integrated into all sorts of other sensors and integration systems, and you won't know they're there, but you'll be screened as you're walking through the course of your normal day, walking into a stadium, walking into a concert hall, walking into school.
And you won't even know it. So that's the big thing here with what you've got is that, we've got all these different types of technologies and metal detectors where, you got to walk through the metal detector, or like, in the airport, you got to walk through and you put your hands up while the thing zips around you, or, you go to a concert or something and you got to put your hands up, hold your metal in your pockets, or throw it in a basket while they wand you to make sure you're not sneaking something in. So that's where I think it's really neat, where it says something like you can hide this thing behind walls, you can mount it on walls. And so I think as we see more of this, type of screening technology in place, is it that I want to talk a little bit about your take on sort of are we getting lulled into a false sense of security when we see more security things, or do we feel more secure if we don't see them? In knowing that they're just working, but then does that also maybe cause us to feel not safe because we don't know if it's working, because we're not seeing a physical beep going off from a metal wand, or the thing being triggered when somebody walks through it? Like, what I think that's an interesting sort of dynamic to look at with a technology that becomes more passive versus something that everybody's used to as being more active and more invasive.
I think that's a fantastic question. And I will tell you that it depends on the sector that in which you're deploying security, right? So you see stadiums where they've got dozens of security people stationed all over the place. And when you go through, this bank of walk-through metal detectors or handheld metal detectors that they're using to screen people, you think, okay, I'm going to walk up to that line, and everyone who walks up that line, all 80,000 of us, are going to walk through it and be screened, and we'll walk through the other side with this clean bill of security health.
Not true.
And depending on who you ask, that may or may not be true. Certainly security companies and facilities who implement these types of things like the deterrent factor, but the deterrent factor is only good until something happens.
Let's talk about
some point.
Right. Yeah.
At some point, you have to be able to detect the things you're trying to keep out of it.
Some of these military shootings where the shooter was somebody where they're not armed in a military facility, and they get a gun in. Your stuff would detect that, right? Correct? Like what happened in Texas and some of these places.
You were breaking up a little bit there, Neil.
No, do you see what I'm talking about? The shootings that have happened on military bases. That if
Sure.
you're able to identify that someone had a weapon that was not supposed to have a weapon, like sometimes they want most of them to be unarmed, and they come in there with a weapon, it somehow gets in there. Your technology would find that, right?
Well, it absolutely. It serves as that early warning system to let you know that someone has entered your facility, or it can even be used to tell you that someone is approaching your facility with a weapon. And then when you tie that in with things like video analytics, when you tie that in with access control systems, biometrics, etc., you can not only know that there's a threat being introduced, but you can know who that is. You can have the history of that person if your system allows for that. And you can even track, once that system has entered your facility, you can track where that person is going. It's not just important to know that something's come in, but it's important to know who has it. And probably the most important thing for response personnel is to know where that threat is going so you can respond appropriately.
Definitely. That's so interesting. Now, when we talk about, and again, we're talking about this technology, where do you see, what other technology do you provide than we talked about with involving detecting things, like different ways that end users can utilize this technology that are provided here at Metrasens?
What else do we provide? Well,
Yes.
this is primarily what we provide, but what we're finding happening more and more is the desire by our customers to use the system in conjunction with other technologies that are complementary and provide for a more comprehensive screening solution, right? So I've mentioned video a lot. I've mentioned access control a lot, physical barriers, security, intrusion detection, those kinds of things where I can detect a weapon at 100 yards from my facility, and all of a sudden I've put up barriers, for example, that won't allow a vehicle to enter my facility until that alarm is resolved, or can detect intrusion on a fence line where we've put sensors and that have detected at a distance from the facility some kind of threat, and then that coupled with the intrusion detector acts as orthogonal detection that says, okay, you really have something here. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing. What we are seeing a lot more of now are really two things. One is data and data collection, and the use of a system like ours in conjunction with others to collect the data that arises from screening hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people a day in some of the facilities we serve. And artificial intelligence. That is not common in the physical security world yet, but it's coming, and especially with, we see it a little bit now with smart video, but smart video gives you one piece of the puzzle, and is often kind of an after event tool. We can use AI to more effectively provide screening that further enhances not only our detection capabilities, but also says, okay, this person has, for example, this typical magnetic signature. They walk into our building every day, and we've kind of created a personalized magnetic signature for this person. Now he comes in next week, and his magnetic signature is much, much larger. Well, we're not interested in detecting the things that he has on that we don't care about, like his laptop and his phone. That's fine. But now he's got something in addition to those that are much, much bigger, and that presents a challenge. So you can't do that with one system alone. We certainly endorse the layered security approach in physical security, really any kind of security. But
this can significantly enhance the physical security in place and the barriers and the physical deterrence in a big way. I mean, it's a really cool
That's
technology.
right. It's the trigger. It's the trigger that these systems have needed to say, hey, there's something wrong here, that goes beyond being triggered by a person. It's now triggered by an actual threat. And that's a big difference.
So what do you see as some of the challenges that you're facing, or that maybe people that are interested in implementing something like these solutions, and how they get it to work for their particular sort of environment? Are you coming up with any sort of resistance, or people saying, no, I don't want to implement this because of X?
Well,
because it's like another layer. So people are like, you know what? I already do this. Why do I need this?
So you'd think the biggest challenge is cost, but it's really not. Probably the most difficult challenge we come up against is kind of changing that old guard security mindset, where they use tools that they've had for 30 years. We use hand wands, and that's what we use because that's what we always use, and that's what we train our people on, and that's what we use. And I can't blame them. Those are the tools that they've been given. But now they start to see companies like ours bringing, our solutions to the table, and what they're realizing now is they're bringing a sword to a gunfight, and they need to have these 21st century solutions to deal with 21st century threats, because hand wands ain't getting it done. And it's the willingness to change that is, again, the biggest challenge. The physical security industry, as I said before, it's an event-driven, reactive system or industry that has a real paradox. They want to provide a high level of security screening, but they don't want to do it at a very high cost. So they'll put, lots and lots of guards around, but they won't pay them very much, for example.
That's correct, yeah.
That's a challenge for them. And it's a challenge for the people who then visit that facility. We think that you don't necessarily have to compromise in order to really to provide the level of screening that you need to be able to provide. This is an industry
down to education. It's like everything else. You got to educate them on it.
Education and embracing technology. That's what the physical security industry really needs to start doing. And we've seen it.
Yes,
it's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening on the surveillance side, no doubt. And now in terms of the screening and detection side, that's coming behind, but it's coming. And it's really companies like ours, frankly, that are leading the way.
When you mentioned the other things like facial recognition, license plate recognition, some of this other great technology, that's why it's so cool about the ability for you guys to integrate your solution with theirs, so that it really makes it so it's very, very difficult to not be caught with a specific violence or something else that happens or disturbance that happens at your facility with all of these measures in place.
Absolutely. You need more pieces of the puzzle, and that's what we're providing. We're providing another essential piece of the puzzle so that whoever is at the other end of that security system that's doing the screening can make a better decision faster.
That's it. And that's the name of the game when you're trying to, either move people through a checkpoint or when you're trying to make a determination onto, whether or not something's a problem. You got to know quickly. And technology is the best way to do that because you're using the power of that technology. I had somebody on the podcast just recently talking about AI. And, you briefly mentioned, how artificial intelligence is changing the landscape in a lot of ways. And as it's being integrated into all these other technologies like facial recognition and camera systems and gait recognition, how people walk. I mean, at ISC West last month, we saw some of that stuff, and it was amazing to see how AI is getting into a lot of these technologies and just how a lot of these various systems now are trying to integrate with each other because to have that full approach of how do we cover all of our bases and how do we do it with the minimal amount of interfaces, quite frankly. I want to be able to manage all of this from one command center with everything in it, but not have to use, 6 different software programs to track this for one and this for another. And I get alerts popping up here and there. And, so the integration side of it, I think is slowly but surely starting to meld together and become closer and closer. And the willingness for the various technology companies to work together because, everybody's looking at the end of the day, how do we keep people safer and things more secure, all have a very similar mindset. And it's very, very interesting. And it's something I haven't seen in other industries where it's like, it's my customer. No, it's your customer. No, it's our customer. How can we help the customer?
I think that's really true. And people who have been in this industry, and I've been in 20 years, and sometimes I feel like I'm still a newbie compared to some of the people with whom we work. Just security is one of those industries where people are in it because they love it.
Right.
I've been doing it for 20 plus years because I love what we do. I love, contributing in some way to creating a safer world. And in fact, prior to my working at Metrosense, I worked at a company that developed more traditional screening tools and it was the biggest of its kind and still is. And it's a great company. I left there to come here because I saw what they were doing with their technology and and knew that they could take the screening industry where it wanted to go. And it wants to go away from that checkpoint modality and towards more ubiquitous screening, as I mentioned before. And
well, you're trying to change the paradigm, right? You're trying to change how things are done. And that's a big undertaking.
You have to, because that's what terrorists are doing. Because 5 years ago, terrorists weren't bombing nightclubs in Florida. 10 years ago, terrorists weren't, going after convention centers in California. The threat has changed. Yep. And so the paradigm needs to change with it. And that's where Metrosense wants to take it.
Definitely, for sure. Well, I mean, looking at the specifics of the technology and the process, what do you think of your product with usability? What do you think, especially when you're talking about specific end users that don't have, the experience in this industry? They are still an old school mentality about how to protect people. How easy is for your technology to be implemented?
Well, yeah, you hit it right on the head. It has to be easy to use. Our system, for example, has 3 buttons on it. One of them's on off and the other one's volume. So how hard could the system be, right?
No, that's challenging. I need you to train me. That's a little too difficult for me, sir.
Yeah, you and me both. It has to be flexible. So I have to be able to use it where I want to use it and not be forced to use it in a certain area. And it has to make sense. It has to provide a result, okay, that makes sense. And our system is very simple. It's either green, there's nothing there, or red, there's a threat there that you want to pay attention to. Keep in mind that the markets we serve, MRI safety, behavioral health, these are markets where we're providing this equipment to, in most cases, to non-security personnel. The director of security in a behavioral health facility is typically the nurse who's been there longer than anybody else.
Right.
So we have to provide her or him with a system that is so easy to use. That's why I think a lot of industries have migrated towards hand wands in the past, because they're just so simple to use and they're cheap, and you just kind of wave them. And we could all go into stories about how we've seen people use hand wands in a very ineffective way. So let's take the onus off the end user to use the system properly and just give them a system that works. You put it down, you turn it on, it comes ready in 5 seconds, and it's ready to go. And the system doesn't lie, and they can rely on the result they're seeing, and that helps them make a better security decision. That's where we've had to focus, and it's really helped us when we've gotten then into more security-related markets like counterterrorism and data protection, because now we've kind of started from scratch, and we've said, okay, this is what we would provide to somebody who doesn't have a security background. When somebody who does sees that and they say, okay, great, now I want to take it here, and we can easily go along with it.
So what is the future of this technology? What do you see as sort of the next step, or how this is going to evolve?
Well, I think we're going to continue to bring the technology to, again, a number of markets where security screening isn't done because the traditional tools don't work, or where we can enhance it. And schools is a great example of that. But of course, lighter, smaller, cheaper is of course what we want. Listen, there's nothing that says that this type of technology can't be used on a residential level. We put cameras on our doorknobs now. Right. Why can't we have detection systems that warn somebody if someone's approaching their house with a weapon?
Sure. It makes perfect sense, especially if the cost is down.
That's the level on which we're thinking here at Metrosens.
Yeah, and this thing only weighs 20 pounds. You can put it anywhere. You probably want to bolt it down so nobody steals it on you, but
exactly.
But I mean, building that into, I could even see going, towards, the next generation of smart homes where everything is being built in now with internet access and all the smart appliances and everything. Something like this makes even a logical next step as well, where you can put one of these things, at the front door, the back door, and somewhere maybe in the main part of the house. I mean, there's a question for you. What is the range of like a single one of these units? Like what area could it cover? Could it cover a typical home, like 2,000 square feet, or?
These are point sensors, so the detection is happening within a 5-foot radius, typically, of the system.
Okay, so the door is good.
But the door is good. But even more important than that, I can put it farther down the sidewalk or farther down the driveway. It doesn't have to be at the front door. It can be, but it can. But with our technology, it can be anywhere. I can put it anywhere. I can stick it in a bunch of trees and detect cars as they're coming down the driveway, and do all sorts of types of things like that.
That's right, because it does say it could be put behind concrete or drywall or cinder block or metal studs, and it'll still work.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
And so it has to be hidden in some so that people don't know that this detection's there, right?
Well, it could be.
Well, it can be. It doesn't have to be, and some people like it as a deterrent, but most people like our system because of the form factor. It can be easily blended into what's around. It's not this imposing portal or a guard who's holding a wand. It can be built into, the facades and office buildings and things like that, and used to screen people again, either in an overt fashion or a covert fashion, so they don't know that they're being screened.
So what do people think of your technology? Let's find out. So we think it's cool, and I'm sure you do. What do the customers think? What do the people that are experiencing it think when they start to use this?
Our customers love our technology, and the analogy that I use is I once heard someone say it's only a problem if you have a solution. So we provide solutions to a lot of problems that facilities like behavioral health facilities or correctional facilities have, but didn't have an answer for. So they just made the decision, you know what, we're not going to deal with that. The contraband issue in corrections, for example, it's terrible. Cell phones have been very prevalent in prisons for a long time, and there really wasn't a good way to combat it. And then we came along and took 80% of the market because they finally saw something that could actually solve the problem. One of the secretaries of corrections in the states that we're in, and we're in 40 or 50 states around the U.S., once said to me, he said, I didn't know I needed one of these things until I got it.
That's awesome.
And for us, that's the biggest compliment.
Yeah, because once they see how it works, and it's actually like, wow, I didn't realize this thing was able to do what I'm seeing it do. And at the end of the day, keeping them safe, keeping things out that aren't supposed to be getting in. That's huge. Now,
absolutely,
people always have some reservations about any sort of screening, right? It doesn't matter how passive you tell them, right? And one of the things, it says on the spec sheet here for the product is it's safe for anybody who's got like a surgical implant or, people who are pregnant, because that's always a big problem, that you run into with like the hand wands or the other things. People are like, oh, wait a minute, I got a pacemaker. I can't go through that. It's like, no, it's okay. No, I don't want it. And they freak out. So,
right.
How, not just for the people that maybe have like an implant or something like that, but how overall, how do people get comfortable with yet another sort of screening device, when they see it? I mean, if they don't see it, they don't know about it. Okay, no harm done. They don't see anything. But when they have something like this, it, to somebody, I mean, it looks pretty, innocuous, right? But to somebody's gonna be like, "Ooh, that's intimidating. I don't want to go near that. I don't want those waves going through my body." So how do we get people more comfortable with I guess that part of screening overall?
Well, it's a great question. In my experience, people generally get annoyed with any kind of screening, right? It's a necessary evil. It's an inconvenience. And what's even more annoying is when they can see a screening operation and it's inefficient. So it's even slower than they think it needs to be. Our systems, and when you think about a system like the ProScreen 900 Plus, which we use at stadiums and schools and places with high throughput, our system accelerates the screening process, not decelerates. So whereas, as a frame of reference, the typical throughput per hour at an airport is 420 people, right? That's kind of what they shoot for. With our system, we are moving 3,000 to 3,500 people through.
That's unreal. That's unreal. Yeah. So you really can talk about inefficiency at airports then with their technology.
No doubt. And so how do people get used to it? They experience it and they go, wow, that's a lot easier than what I used to have to go through or what I've gone through at other facilities. And all of a sudden screening doesn't become this big, obtrusive, tenuous process. Yeah. It's exactly. It is just something that I can just walk through and it's done and I'm good.
And I bet what
That's
else
what
is
people really like.
interesting too is like, I know like with, for example, with like a hand scanner, right? I mean, I've done event security. I've used those things.
Yeah.
It's funny when you see people start to come in the door and then they see the scanning going on and they turn around and they walk out because they know they're whatever they're carrying, whether it's a concealed weapon, you know, a gun, a knife, or something they shouldn't be carrying in there. They see that, and so it has that deterrent. So I can see sort of two sides of this, right? You can have the actual deterrent where somebody is seeing it in action, right? I have something. I see other people being checked for what I'm trying to sneak in. I'm going to get caught if I don't turn around and leave, kind of thing, right? Then you have the other side of it, which is you've got this device completely maybe inside of a wall or, you know, bolted to a wall or something like that. So it's kind of out of the way. You don't see it. And now everybody's kind of just walking through. Everything's going on. You've got something you think, oh man, it's going to be easy for me to sneak in this. And then all of a sudden, you're caught, right? Or an alarm goes off, and now you're like, oh wow, what the heck's going on? And security descends on you, et cetera. So it's interesting, I think, to look at it from both sides. You know, like the actual seeing the deterrence occurring versus not seeing anything until there's an issue.
Absolutely, and so we've designed, I should say, a system that can be used as for both overt and covert screening. So it's really up to the end user then to decide what they want to subject their patrons to, and what's going to be most effective. And I'll add a third piece to that. The third piece is now we're using a different technology which detects threats in a different way. And the best way to explain that is an example that we had at a correctional facility in California. We had an inmate who was being screened using our product, and he kept setting it off. And he'd take stuff out of his pockets, and he kept setting it off and kept setting it off. And they eventually had him down to his, boxers and flip-flops, and he kept setting it off. And they said, all right, you got something on you. The system doesn't lie. This is our CellSense Plus unit. And they finally took him down to medical imaging, and they found that he had 2 security drill bits in his stomach. And so they asked him, said, well, what'd you do that for? And he said, well, I saw you come in and I just popped them in my mouth. And all the screws in correctional facilities have security heads so that you need a special drill bit to unscrew them. Well, he had 2 of these things. And he said, I just popped them in my mouth because when you guys screen me with your hand wand, it never gets it. So whether they can see it or not is a big factor, but now we're detecting different things in a different way. So now that person walks in and says, well, maybe they're screening there, but I can usually get this gun through if I hide it in my coat, or if I hide it in my belt, or if I put it in my sock. And I can still get through a security checkpoint. You can't now with a system like ours.
So that's great.
That's a big piece of it.
I think that's fantastic. So you talked about how certain people got it right. They're already using their own methods, airports, things like that. Do you see your technology at one point getting to airports to make it more efficient? Do you think it will happen at one point?
I think it can. I think another interesting question about airports is where else can we do screening where there currently is none? The airside part of the airport is really pretty secure, right? And we've screened every passenger and staff member who's going into the airside of the airport. But anyone can walk into the ticket lobby. Anyone can walk into baggage claim, right? And so, and there have been attacks recently. The most recent one I can think of was in Belgium, where bombs were just thrown into the baggage claim area. There's no security being done there. And so, what if we aren't just creating efficiencies at the checkpoint for passengers and staff, but what if we can also provide a system that hardens the other parts of the airport, which actually tend to be some of the more crowded parts of the airport, and do so in a way that doesn't require the same checkpoint that's in the terminal to be used at the baggage claim area for visitors and people picking up other passengers and taxi drivers and stuff like that. What if we can harden that? So our interest in airports really, we have obviously interest in aviation security, but in airport security itself, I think that's an interesting question that we're asking ourselves now. What can we do to help make that airport, not just air travel, safer?
Right. No, hey, and there, like you said, there, I mean, there are a lot of people in those areas, and they aren't screened the same way. You can walk in there with anything until you get, to that final, get into your gate area. So that's interesting. We could use it on the perimeter, et cetera. So very, very neat stuff, Jim. We really appreciate you being on there. You have any last thoughts for our listeners here? We're cranking right through our hour here.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I think this is a really important topic to talk about, safety in general, and certainly physical security specifically. And I think that, companies like ours are striving to do what needs to be done in security, which is not just to make detection more capable and keep facilities safer, but do it in a way so that it can be woven into the fabric of society, so that we can screen people as they live and work and travel, and not make those people, or I should say, subject those people to, an arduous screening paradigm. That's out
take
there.
Take off your shoes at the airport. Here we go.
Right. Exactly. People are doing it. Companies like Metrasens are doing it. And we look forward to seeing other companies start to get on board.
That's awesome. So if people are interested in learning more about Metrasens and the products and the technology, the website, obviously, just the company name, right? Metrasens.com.
Yeah, www.metrasens.com.
That's M-E-T as in Thomas, R-A, S as in Sierra, E and as in November, S as in Sierra. Metrasens.com. And of course, you guys are on social media too, right? LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter.
Absolutely. All that good stuff.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on Safety Talk, Jim. Really appreciate it. Any last thoughts, Neil? Nope.
Okay. I was getting ready to close. No, I have my thoughts. This is very informative, very, very good. I really enjoy learning about certain technology like this, and it just blows you away what we can do to protect people. And yet the areas where these terrible, horrific attacks are happening do not have the kind of technology in those areas. And that's why that they need truly. If you look at a lot of these different places where the attacks have occurred, they're close sometimes security wise, but not to the level that they need to be to stay secure.
No, and I think we're going to see this product a lot more places, Jim. If you have anything to say about it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for being on, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in to Safety Talk. Of course, you can always get more information about the products that we talk about on the show at safetytalkproducts.com. And of course, past episodes as well, safety news and information in between our episodes at safetytalkpodcast.com. I'm your host, Pete Canavan, and until our next show, you guys all stay safe.